Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. Thank you for being part of TestMU Conference 2026. I'm Nikhil Saxena, Brand Marketing Manager at TestMU AI, and I'll be your host for this session on Architects of Trust, Redefining Quality Leadership in an Agentic World. As software moves from deterministic scripts to autonomous agents, today's conversation is about what quality leaders should measure when the old metrics stop telling the truth. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. This session is being recorded in case you need to drop off midway. We'll have a dedicated Q&A session at the end. And please do post your takeaways on LinkedIn or X with our hashtag TestMuConference. With that, I welcome Sobita Nilanath, Senior Manager, Software Engineering at Salesforce, where she heads quality engineering for Agentforce Service India. With two decades across Wipro, EMC, and Dell, and recognitions including the Salesforce Women of Impact Awards 2026, she brings both the leadership lens and the hands-on depth this topic demands. Thank you for joining us, Sobita. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Nikhil. Very glad to be here today. This is my first time at the TestMU conference. So, without any further ado, let me go into the session. Are you able to see my screen, the deck? Yeah, I hope it is visible. So, our topic for today is architects of trust. We all know that we are in an agentic era now, and the quality leadership or the quality mindset itself is changing, right? There are a lot of things which are changing right now. The changing landscape with AI, generative AI, then agentic AI. And so it is high time that we also changed our approach, right, from a quality perspective. What do we do now, or what have we been doing across the decades with automation, with many other innovations in quality? So how do we change it now, and to adapt to the agentic world, right? How do you transform it from just a quality lens to a trust lens, right, to being more strategic? And also from a leadership perspective, what things can change, or what are the metrics that need to be measured? And also from a quality engineer perspective, like what is the future, or how does future look like for us? What is the change that we need to make in our current approach so that we can adapt to this world? So that's what we are going to talk about today. So I'm just wanted to start with a quick kind of a case study or a situation, right? Of course, we are all working for you know, billion-dollar or million-dollar product suites which are going to the customer. And with AI in place, there are a lot of things that is changing, right? We had the deterministic way, like just a test pass or fail earlier. Right now, it's not just about pass or fail. There are a lot more of aspects or parameters to it. And how do we look at it from a quality lens? So we are talking about one such instance here, a recursive prompt incident. So there was a multi-agent transactional workspace integration. What was it designed for? To orchestrate customer refunds. We all use payment gateways, UPIs, etc., right? So just say in case there is a lag or there's an error, how do we go about it? We need, in case the transaction didn't go through, we will expect those refunds, right? So what happened in this specific case is that the legacy test reports were showing all the test coverage pass rate as 94.2 percentage, almost 95%, which is like great, right? Like, in a usual scenario, we will look at it as like 95% test passes, like really excellent, and which means like most of our major test cases are passing and everything is almost green, right? But what happened here? The agent fell into a recursive prompt loop at midnight, and repeated transactions were executed without even checking, and that cost, a 400K dollars refunds before the alerts were even triggered. So this is what happens if we use deterministic frameworks in a probabilistic environment like the agentic AI world. So we cannot say a test is pass or fail. What we really need to do is also about like how accurate is the test. Is this really serving the customer, or is the customer happy with the accuracy, or what is it that we can do? Is the test consistent? Is it consistently giving the same result, or is it giving random results? So these are the problems or challenges that we have with AI, right? So how do we go about all these kind of problems? How do we challenge a probabilistic system? Because we are used to challenging a deterministic system. We have all, as testers or quality people, we always try to break the system, right, in different ways. We try different scenarios, not just happy parts. We look at negative parts, or dirty testing, or monkey testing as we call it. We try all our best to break the system. Now, how do we break or challenge the a probabilistic system? What are those challenges? It can be entirely different, right? For example, I can give you an instance, what we do at Salesforce. So we have these chat and voice agents. So the responses for these AI agents, the responses to each of the customer prompts, right, will be different, right? And based on regions also, even the prompts will be, or the responses should be different, right? In India, we may expect something very casual, or like if it's another region, it might be something very formal that is needed. People are expect to the point kind of an answer from an agent. And how does the customer feedback, how is it taken? Based on the customer feedback, how does the agent decide if it needs to be escalated, or if it needs to resolve a problem? How do we even look at whether the actual issue has been resolved or not? Because the agent can easily close a case, an AI agent can, but did it really solve the customer problem or not? How do we go about that? So these are some of the questions, fundamental questions. I guess these are like, these pose as challenges to us when we look at it from a CRM lens, from the Salesforce lens. So we are going to dive into more such, some of those scenarios, and look at what can differ, what can we do differently. So, I basically have categorized my presentation into three parts. One is about the trust framework that I'm going to talk about, which is to basically evaluate and isolate and scale. At scale, how does the AI agent work, and how do we ensure or assure that the quality is built in within the strict risk boundaries? That's a part one. There is also the second part, which talks more about a leadership pivot. How, as leaders, how do we change the approach, and what do we do differently in this world? And the third part is, I'm going to talk about how is the evolving quality engineer roles and responsibilities. What will a quality engineer look like? What will their responsibilities look like in the agentic world? So these are the three major parts that I'm going to talk about. So let's delve into the trust framework first. So I know when we say trust, there are so many things that come into your mind. So what are some basic items, or basic things that we need to build trust? To build trust with a product. So we are building trust with the customer, based on the product that we are selling them, right? We are providing them, right? So how do we build that trust? That is what we are going to look at. So here, if you see, we are looking at three major areas for trust: alignment, predictability, and blast radius. I believe alignment is something all of us have come across. I talked about accuracy earlier, right? The degree of adherence to the semantic criteria. So, how do we ensure that, semantically, most of the criteria are met and there is an adherence to it? So, what do? We use deep evals, right? We use evals to test the agent responses, and the evals will tell us, like, it is basically one LLM testing another LLM's response, and it will tell us, like, how good it is, or how accurate the response is. Now, is it aligned to the customer or not? That is also another aspect that we should be looking at. Because if even if it meets our accuracy criteria or threshold, it may not meet the customer's criteria, and that is where the customer aspect also comes into picture. The second thing is also something which I touched upon: consistency, right? There are multiple prompt iterations which happen, that too at scale. Is the agent, or the agentic system, able to produce consistent results? Is it really predictable or reliable? So that's the next part. And the third, of course, blast radius. This is something, I guess, day in day out, as quality engineers, we'll all be looking at, right? If there is a bug, or if there is a customer defect which comes in, we look at the blast radius. Or if there's a defect getting fixed, what are the changes which are going in, and that change, what is the impact of the change, where all can it be affected, right? What are the areas, like we look at that blast radius and then decide on the regression areas that we need to look at, or the regression test that we need to run, the regression suite that we need to run. So I just wanted to bring up about a concept called this trust equation. So trust is equal to A into P by B. So because alignment and predictability are very important, they are at the numerator, and the blast radius, it should be as less as possible, right? The alignment predictability should be very high, and the blast radius should be really low. So that is how we can maximize confidence. So minimize or shrink the blast radius within our boundaries, and increase or maximize the alignment and the predictability. So this is how we can treat trust as a very hard metric, and without fail, we can go about uh, measuring trust, and ensuring that the measure is consistent across. Now we are going to some core indicators of trust. So we again talked about the accuracy. How does accuracy come? The semantics, right? How do we validate each execution? What is a conversational accuracy? So we talked about the agents and their responses, right? What is a conversational accuracy that the agents can provide? The agents can provide. When does an agent decide that the problem cannot be solved by the agent with the existing information, and it needs to be really transferred to a human agent? Or when does an agent decide where the problem is really resolved and they can close the case? These are some of the things that we'll be looking at, right? And intent continuity, sometimes what happens is the agent can give a very correct response technically, or from a grammatically and everything, but it may not really match the intent of the customer. The customer is asking for something, or the customer is frustrated, and you cannot just give to the point answers and non-empathetic answers, right? We need deep empathy when it matters to the customer. And we need to, the AI agent also should be trained in such a way that the agents can manage different different emotions, or different situations of customers. That is something which we'll need to look at. Variance. So when I talk about variance, it is probably it's basically goes back to the predictability or the consistency part itself, right? What is a system divergence over multiple runs? Is it really consistently providing the output or not? Or is there a large variance? It's in one run it's giving certain output, in another run it's giving totally different output, or very varied output. It's not within a range, right? So we look at variance or deviation within a range. If it is being able to contain within that range, let's say for example we are talking about zero point zero 0.04 as variance. So the variance should be as low as possible, and the accuracy should be very high, 98.5 or almost 99, right? It's very close to 100. And the third one is mitigation. Again, we are going back to the blast radius point here. So how do we contain the edge cases? How do we ensure that the changes or the fixes that go in are not getting or impacting the surrounding APIs? It's not getting cascaded. Like, are there gates? Is there gated isolation? Are there feature flags in place? Can we just, in case there is a problem with at the customer end, can we just close that gate and ensure that the problem is also solved, right? Is it very easily flippable, right? That is also another area that we really need to look into. So these are some things probably as quality engineers we may not have looked into earlier, but right now these are becoming the most important pillars or indicators of trust. Now we're also going to look at the agentic risk metrics, based on the agency level. So I've categorized it as agency levels. Like the level one is assistant. So what does this level mean? So the operational scope of the agent here is data retrieval or you look up. It's more of like fetching, right? And what can go wrong here? There can be context hallucination. The agent may not understand the exact context where what is needed, and without that, if the agent goes and tries to look up or try to find a retrieve data, then it won't be effective at all. And what can be our strategy from a quality perspective for this? Grounded assertions. So your assertions, should be based on grounding. So we should really know what is the context also, and based on that, our assertions should be really very reliable, so that even if there is a context hallucination from the agent, we should be able to catch it. Now we go to the agency level 2, coordinator. So here, probably the agency level is a little bit more complex. We have guided workflows, drafts, or interactions. There are more of responses, and it's not just a direct retrieval of data. It's going to a guided workflow. It has to go into multiple areas, or multiple articles, or multiple databases, and fetch the information, and maybe collate the information and provide it to the to the customer. So what can fail here? Logic error injection. Maybe the collation also, in case if it doesn't happen properly, then it can be an irrelevant data for the customer. What do we do about it? The mitigation strategy can be human in the loop gate. So there should be some human review in place in this case, right? Otherwise this is not going to work. And the third level of agency is autonomous. This is like completely autonomous. There is no human needed. So what are these very high level of agency from an agentic perspective, from an agent perspective? And API execution, or recursive tools, or multiple workflows that we do on a like a regression, or maybe some of these repeated tasks that we do on a daily basis, or very periodically, or very often, right? So this is where, it's like completely autonomous. Agent is running everything. There is no human in the loop, and we're just taking the output from the agent. So what can go wrong here? There can be cascading loop deviation. So sometimes it can so happen that there are multiple agents or sub agents when they are running, and probably there is a dependency of agent 1, agent 2, like that. Let's say agent 1 doesn't give a proper output or proper response. That can affect agent 2, and that can cascade, right? That deviation can cascade, and it'll, at the end, after all the sub agents have done their tasks, it will become really huge, the deviation. What do we go about this? How do we do how do we mitigate this? Isolate the transactions as much as possible. So here in this agency level, as we move across to a higher agency level, we need stronger isolation, right? And very, very strict boundaries. If that is not in place, we are, the quality and the predictability of the outcome will be like really, really bad, or it will be risky. So, we talked about the trust part here, right? What do we really do? How do we ensure that there is trust in whatever output is coming and whatever we provide? Let's say, as quality engineers, we provide the sign offs. We are the last or the final, gatekeepers, or the gate checks that we do before an application or a software goes into production, right? So, how do we ensure that it is solid before we give the sign off? These are the some of the areas, or some of the indicators or parameters that we need to look at before we give sign offs. Now we're going to the part 2. This is about the leadership pivot. Here I will be talking more about what are the changes as leaders we need to make, so that we have alignment across teams. Now, when I say alignment across teams, mostly it will be top down, right? It comes from the higher or the senior leaders. It comes to the mid-level leaders, and the first line managers, and then it goes to the engineers, right? How do we ensure that is alignment between all the from the lead between the leaders and the engineers, because the leadership expectations can be really high. How do we go about this? So here I'm talking about two major things: aligning outward or upward. This outward or upward is about the executive leaders, right? Your VPs or senior VPs or the CXOs who come, and they will demand a lot of parameters and SLAs, right? What can be some of the parameters that is being asked today? Increase productivity is one parameter because of agentic AI, right? Everybody wants increase, faster go to market, increase productivity. Everything should be quicker. And also, what else is needed? The level of AI assisted tools, or what how do we use, or like if we are like pushing in more PRs every day, right? Those are some of the metrics that the executive leaders will be looking at. Now, how do we pivot this? How do we convert this corporate expectations? The expectations will be having like zero errors, like there shouldn't be any errors at the customer's end. Now, how do we translate it or convert it into some practical probability ranges? Because of course we are all working towards or marching towards an absolute zero kind of a world, but that's not always possible, right? There are different aspects. When we translate the technical outcomes into applications, sometimes the customer expectations, there will be slight changes in the ranges, etc. So how do we translate that expectations from the executive leaders to a more probable or a practical kind of a range? That is one part that the leadership, as leaders, we need to look at. And also aligning downward. Here we'll be talking about the team culture. I mean, we are talking about the team, whoever reports to your direct reports, and your their further the engineers, your whole organization basically. So how do we track the developer output? Can we do it just by the number of scripts or the number of PRs? No, right? That is not the right way. How do we track that there are like the continuous improvement that happens, like the resilience, or the evaluation run times? How do we measure all those? Like, do we also look at, rather than looking at the number of PRs, do we look at whether our automation scripts, the feedback loop is smaller or shorter, and our automation script takes lesser time to run now, and it gives us more and more frequent feedback so that we can improve it? And is self-healing in place? Those are the things which we should be tracking, right? And is it really predictable or consistent? On an average, when we run it for a sprint, let's say a 2-week sprint, if you're running it daily across the sprint from day one to date, the last day, is it providing that consistency? These are some of the measures that we should be looking at. Now, this is the reality gap, right? Like, in what is a usually from an executive expectation to to an engineering down to a ground level, there is a reality gap, right? We know that there's a divergence gap. So many of the research reveals that there's a 78% alignment gap between executive expectations and the actual the agentic performance. Now, how do we bridge this gap? We need to translate the software reliability into commercial terms. How do we, like I talked about, right? We are looking at the run times, the shortened cycles for the automation, the self healing available, how many production defects, the defect leakage ratio that is less, and also an impact based regression, right? That is something which we really need to figure out. Earlier, we used to run extensive regression suites. Now, that is not the case. We need everything quicker, so we cannot afford to wait for a longer time to for all a regression suite to run and give us a result. So, based on the changes that go in, we should pick and choose or prioritize the tests, and only that suite should be running. And we should understand the blast radius before we run these regression suites. So, those are kind of the things that, as leaders, we should align with the executive leaders, as well as educate and make our engineers aware so that the gap is reduced. Now, we are also again looking at another case study or another example here. We all know in this world, most of the engineers have, they have routine burnouts, right? They are trying to be more productive, get in more PRs, get in more code. But at the same time, there are like runtime hallucinations, the unpredictability of AI that happens, and how do they deal with all those things? So rather than this kind of an example that I'm giving is, instead of like going with classical ticketing, we did some chaos audits. So how do we do this? Engineers were rewarded for inducing specific like agent exceptions, like the let's say an agent that had like so many exceptions or challenges in one run or in one sprint. By the next sprint, it has reduced the number of exceptions, or the number of errors have reduced really well, and that is something which we should be rewarding. And of course, building fallback states or gates, right? Like, how do we if there is a failure, how do you move back or fall back, roll back to the previous state as soon as possible? Those are the things which we really need to look at from a quality perspective. So this, how does this help, or how did this help us, is like, of course, our production loops, there was a lot of reduction, 98% almost. And also the burnout, also there was a drop of 65%. So basically, we are talking about psychological safety here. We are providing the team with a structure or with an environment where they can fail fast, and at the same time then course correct themselves and get on with the next release, or the next approach, or the next agent, right? Or like a better version of the agent. Now, another thing also as leaders that we need to do is about shifting the resource allocation. Of course, all of us initially used to do a lot more of manual tests. Now it is only 20 percentage of manual tests, and automation is 35%. Let's say I'm just looking at just a probabilistic kind of a setup here, or some percentages, approximate percentages. Now, statistical evaluation will be 10%. This is very, very important when it comes to AI, right? And the guardrail modeling. How do we, statistical evaluation, we already talked about, like, how do we measure the agents, right? Like using the tools like Deep Eval, etc., where accuracy, predictability, all these other aspects also come in. Now, the last part is about guardrail modeling. So what are the guardrails? We should have strict boundaries, and we should model those boundaries whenever we are creating more agents and making them do the tasks, right? Like when you are like asking, prompting and asking the agent to do things, all these guardrails should be inbuilt in our prompts, or the agent should be trained in such a way that the guardrails will be automatically taken care of. If that is not happening, then it will be very, very tough. So this is somewhere, like, you can uh, shift the resources more towards the statistical validation, because manual tests, we are spending much, much lesser time. Of course, automation is AI assisted as well, that is faster now, though it is more. At the same time, this the last two pieces of statistical evaluation and guardrail modeling take a lot of impact, or take more significance at this point of time. So this is also something as leaders we should be taking care of. Now we move to the last part, the evolving the quality engineer. So what is it that as a quality engineer, we were initially manual testers, then we became automation engineers, or writing scripts, etc. Now how do we move that needle and become high value strategic system evaluators, or agentic evaluators, you can call it as? So we are discussing the modern QE career pathway here. I've just put different, like, four different terms here. One is the automator. We all know what an automator does, right? We are writing determinist scripts in different tools, right? Be that Selenium, Cypress, Playwright, everything. Now from that we move to a mindset of evaluator. I guess this is where probably most of the quality engineers are right now, in because the agentic world or agentic era has taken a lot of prominence now. So we are trying to build semantic checks and tracking the variance, like, the predictability statistics across different test sets at scale, right? This is where we are now. Now where should we move to? Architect. So what does an architect mean? It's not like a traditional QE architect or a development architect. We will be agentic architects, right? We will be configuring multi-agent models, and of course the system safeguards will be implemented, and fail safes. We talked about the rollback, we talked about self-healing, right? And how can we increase the agency level, right? We talked about the level 1, 2 and 3. How can make it as autonomous as possible? Because some of the mundane tasks, the usual tasks, can be definitely autonomous. In certain cases where we really need the human in the loop, we will have that human review in place. So identifying where it can be autonomous, what can be autonomous, what cannot be autonomous, these are things that as an architect, as a QE architect, you will do, or a trust architect, you will do. And the ultimate or the ideal pathway would be like a guardian, like, You're setting the operational context boundaries, ethical baselines, and compliance systems. Now, how do we get there? So right now with AI, there is a lot more of bias, lot more of compliance and rules that come into picture, right? Like India has its own AI laws, Europe has GDPR, US has its own laws. So based on the regions, there'll be different laws, and the privacy and security aspects also become very much more significant with agentic AI. So how do we ensure that all these things are taken care of? The system is compliant, it is the data is not being misused, there are no biases, the AI agent is responsible enough, the AI agentic system is responsible enough. That will be the ultimate pathway, which is called the guardian. So we talked about the role, and now we're also talking about three major pillars of the modern quality engineering. Semantic competence, right? Rather than just looking at whether it's a pass or fail, we will be tracking the logical flows. We'll be tracking the prompts, the context state consistency, etc. We'll also be looking at the other aspect is statistical rigor. Rather than just binary pass or fail, we are looking at scores, right? Accuracy across dynamic evaluation matrices. They may be based on regions or based on different other aspects or categories. The statistics may change, and we'll have to tweak it. The way the system cannot be like just say a pass or a fail, it has to be tweaked and modified uh, to for different customer expectations, based on the region, based on the domain, based on whatever. Like for example, retail, or it can be speed can be one aspect for retail, right? You take finance, the accuracy is what is more and more important. Like retail or e-commerce, the speed is very important. For finance, the accuracy is more important. Even if you don't want to have so much of speed, that is still okay. So these are the trade-offs that we'll have to make. And of course, compliance and ethics, we already talked about it in the guardian role as well, right? The compliance or the ethics part, ethical AI or responsible AI is very important. Ethical systems, building ethical systems or building responsible systems which have very less bias, which are compliant to all the rules, which are not misusing data, or which are not storing data wherever not needed, not storing any private information, not compromising with the security. These are also going to be major pillars. So these are some of the areas that I guess we should heavily invest in right now, and ensure that we are all up to date, which will help us in moving towards that, maybe a trust architect from a quality engineer to a trust architect. How do we move this? It is by following all these major pillars, right? Upskilling ourselves in these and making continuous improvements. Trainings and uh, AI related camps that happened for all of the organization. We had mandatory trainings and certifications that we need to take. With all that, we've seen that it was almost a 68 percentage from a legacy manual to a kind of AI assisted or AI enabled or AI powered evaluator. There was a 68% shift in the way people looked at it. And with all these reskilling programs, we also had other benefits like boost in productivity, which was 42%. And also the expansion of the statistic validation capabilities. We talked about the evals, right? Like how the usage of evals, how has it improved, or how much has it increased. And also faster pivot cycles. We are we have very fast go to market cycles right now. So these are the changes that we have seen in with some of the transformations and the upskilling programs that we have run. So I just want to conclude saying this: the software world does not need engineers or quality engineers or testers who passively write or test the scripts. What it demands is visionary leaders and who can actively architect trust systems. So that should be our goal. We should become trust architects so that the agentic systems are like very robust systems that are being built, and we should probably shift more left and start getting involved. From the, of course, from the requirements we do get involved, we should have a say in the design of the systems as well. So that is how quality engineer can evolve and add value to this in this agentic world. Thank you so much for listening to me. If you are interested in connecting to me, this is my LinkedIn QR code. You can connect with me. So thank you so much, Nikhil and Tesmu. I guess Kavya and Sparsh also were talking to me for this opportunity. I really, really enjoyed having this conversation, and I know I'm open to any Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, Savita. It was a great session. So yeah, we'll go ahead with few questions. I'll just pop up on the screen. So yeah, first question is like how might leadership and line of business team structures changes as agentic AI continues to disrupt workforces? And can you cite any examples from teams or companies you're familiar with, whether this
Yeah.
has happened or is happening?
Yeah, so sure. Pretty much what I talked about, right? Like, we cannot just be say that, we are automating things and there are scripts running. So what we need to really focus on is like one, are we really automating the right things, or are we really making those things like the regression suites, which are very making them autonomous? Second thing is the feedback loop should be really shorter. Are they running really fast enough so that we are getting the results and we are able to ship and give answers to the customers as well, right? And is self healing in place, right? These are I guess two three questions, or to which we will need answers so that that shift really happens, because the traditional mode of quality engineering doesn't probably work anymore. It will be very very different, and with just the traditional mode we cannot survive or we cannot thrive, right? We are not looking at just survival, we are looking at thriving, and that shift in mindset is also needed.
Right, Savita. I'll just pop up the next question. So yeah, here it goes. When agent test agents, what does a quality leader actually own? And how do you get stakeholders to trust AI-driven quality decisions without a human sign-off?
Yeah, so agent definitely does a majority of the testing, but we also talked about the different levels of agency, right? We really need to be decisive on where we add value, because in certain cases the human in the loop cannot be avoided. And if you ask me, though manual testing also going to be very less now, it cannot be completely avoided, because there are certain things, because right now we are in a mode, or we are in an era of like product suites, right? There are product suites which work with different complex products, right? It's not just one product which is serving the customer. Let's say if you even take some of the Salesforce products, most of the product lines work with others, and there are workflows which cut across this product lines. So how can an agent understand all the context, or the domain complexities of all these product lines? It's just not possible, right? And we can train the agent maybe to some extent, but the end-to-end workflows, or that customer-centric workflows, is where the human touch or the human feedback really needs to be there, and that cannot be avoided at all, because agent can be trained for straightforward scenarios. It can be autonomously running, like we talked about the regression suite or your direct functional validation, but the complex customer workflows cannot be done by agents. At least we haven't gotten there yet, and as we improve the agents to get there, we are the human review or the human involvement will more be in the from a requirements or a design space. And you also know, right, with AI in place now, there are blurring lines between different roles. So earlier we had like product management, quality developer, tester, like that. Right now there are very blurring lines. You can talk to you, I don't know how many of you heard about this role called forward deployment engineers, right? FDEs. What do they do? It's a mix of like product, developer, tester, maybe a support person. So I mean, wearing those different hats is very very important. That is where we can really add value. So the because you don't need really, you don't need to have exact coding knowledge to develop a product now, right? To develop an agentic skill, maybe to develop a cloud skill, you it's all good prompting skills that you need, not the coding knowledge. So that is how you start getting involved in different stages of the software development life cycle, starting from interacting with the customers, and that's where we can add value.
Very rightly said, Shobita. Human in the loop is really important. So now we can go for the next question. It's like, how does the blast radius affect trust in an AI system, and how can it be minimized?
Yeah, so again, a blast radius, I cannot probably give a very generic answer for that. It depends, right? Based, it's a lot based on the changes. One typical example that we already talked about is like, let's say we are making a change, a common change in a product suite, and it goes to customers at different regions. Based on the culture, the demography, or even sometimes the age of the person, of the customer who uses it, it needs to adapt, right? You take any of these common applications that we use on a day-to-day basis, right? How a very young person uses it, or how probably a little elder person uses it, it's entirely different, right? So we cannot like just say that the blast radius can affect everything, but looking at it from an enterprise product lens, what I can say is when there are more integrations, more integration points, more complex workflows, the blast radius can be really high, right? How do we keep it low? Is again, I talked about gaiters or feature flags, right? Uh, can you quickly roll back if there is an issue, or can you mask the feature or flag the feature, right? And can you only give it to people? How do you masking behind a feature flag? How does it help? You can give it only to those customers who want that customization, right? They can turn it on if they want it. The others who don't need the feature, probably that's a licensed feature that is like, some of these AI features are very costly as well, right? From a cost perspective also, all customers would not need it. Maybe a small and medium customer may not need it, but an enterprise customer may need it. So that is how you look at different aspects, right? And how do we add value there? We are calling it out. Is it we are doing those checks? Are the feature flags in place? How easy is the rollback? Now, those are the things that we are checking so that we can tell them, okay, hey, this is working fine, or this is, or this, there can be a larger blast radius for this.
Right. Now I'll take the last question and we'll wrap up the session.
Yeah.
It's like, which metrics actually matter on a quality leader's dashboard now?
Okay.
Yeah.
As I mean, I guess that's pretty much what we discussed in the
Yeah.
trust area also, right? One is the consistency or the predictability. It matters a lot. And also the accuracy, or you can call it as probably the alignment part we talked about, right? So this
Right.
accuracy and consistency are very important from an agentic or an AI agent kind of a system. Plus, obviously, from a productivity perspective, or what are the outcomes, is our effective output, like let's say we're using AI heavily for our automation and our day-to-day activities. What is the use, like, other the token usage, is it really justified, and what is the effective output? How has our effective outcome varied compared to a non-AI era, right? If you can
Right.
show that improvement, that those are some of the metrics that I guess we should be looking at. And of course, from a coverage perspective, as earlier, I guess test coverage was a very important metric earlier. Right now, I would say coverage is not that important. We should be looking at targeted coverage. Again, what is the impact? What is the blast radius? What are the changes going in? Is it really important? And what is a short? Do we have a shorter feedback loop? So these are the running time of the automation scripts or automation suites. Those are also important. These are some of the metrics definitely quality leaders should be looking into.
Right, Jovita. Thank you so much for such a wonderful, insightful session. Thank you. And stay tuned, everybody, for the next session. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you, Nikhil, and thanks for all the questions. I would love to, if you have any more questions, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn or message me. Would love to answer those questions. Thanks,
Sure,
Nikhil.
sir.
Bye
Thank you.
bye.